Welcome to Xhibition and Xbox Podcast Episode 3. My name is Samuel Adams, and we are just a few weeks away from E3 2021. You can feel it in the air. The hype is certainly there. Microsoft has announced that Xbox and Bethesda will hold a joint press conference on June 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, so tune in, get ready, the future of Xbox is coming. And to prepare for the future of Xbox, I'm sitting down on today's show with my friend Chris Shriver to talk more about what is coming from Xbox at E3, our hopes, our dreams. We're talking about the Xbox brand and so much more. It's a fantastic conversation that I highly recommend you take a look at because Chris is a fantastic guy. We hit it off on Twitter a couple of years ago. He is a social media freelancer at IGN, and on top of that, he is a host on the Platformers podcast. Just an all-around fantastic guy. So without further ado, let's dig into it with Chris Shriver right now on Xhibition and Xbox Podcast. So Chris, let's kick things off with some intros. Tell us about yourself, what you do, where you are online. Give us the rundown.
Oh, man. So I am Shrives93 all over the place. That's like the easiest spot to find me. If you Google it, I will appear. I am a member of the Platformers podcast. We're Platformers Pod corporately everywhere, socially. We've been doing that for 5. So this week is the week that I met Josh and Brian for Kind of Funny Live 2.
Nice.
In San Francisco. Yeah. So I have like in my time hop, it's all like pictures of us. Like Jess and I went to Yosemite, my fiance.
Yeah.
And all that cool stuff. So yeah, we've been doing that for about 5 years. It's a weekly gaming podcast. Josh is a previous employee of IGN, and then Brian and I are current employees, freelancing. We've both been doing that for about 3 years now. So he does a lot of he's on the commerce team now that he like helps, he runs, I don't know, tells a bunch of people what to do, what to buy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
As you do, yeah. You just tell people what to buy and just direct them in that way.
Exactly. And then I am on the social team. So I run all of the social media on the weekend. So any images that go up on Instagram, I'm the guy that makes those in Photoshop as quickly as humanly possible. So if you ever see like a typo or something looks a little off, it's probably because I ran out of time in my shift. And so that's always fun. And then like we get to cover like, E3 and like any like big major events. If they ever need coverage on the weekends or just an extra set of hands, I'll usually try and make it work around my like full-time work schedule, which is basically just IT guy. So I do I'm a systems engineer for a local tech company. So Microsoft Azure, Linux, all that DevOps sweet goodness.
Yeah, a man of many talents over here.
Yeah. I hustle, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, you definitely got the hustle going for sure. And especially like you mentioned with E3 coming up, that's a super busy time of year for anybody that even has one podcast, let alone, everything that you're doing on top of your full-time work. That's going to be a lot.
Yeah. I mean, at this point I'm used to it. I work 7 days a week now. But everyone's like, "Oh my God," and whenever they hear it, I'm just kind of like, figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you love it, and you enjoy what you're doing, especially when it comes to E3. I mean, back whenever I was first starting YouTube, which not to say that I'm some kind of like big shot or anything, but whenever you're a young kid and you're starting to get that passion for like content creation and stuff, E3 is like the Super Bowl halftime show of video game coverage and YouTube content,
Yeah, I mean, E3 is it there are years I like it more than Christmas, depending on what's going on, right? Like, just the news that can come out of it, and it's like all your wildest dreams come true of like, oh my God, this game is like finally being made.
Yeah, definitely.
It's amazing.
Yeah, those stealth releases, those stealth drops where you're like, there's no way that you're getting this, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's some kind of massive announcement that no one even predicted, just out of left field.
Yeah,
definitely.
Some magical stuff.
So when it comes to this year, obviously this is Xhibition and Xbox Podcast. Glad to have you on for episode 3, if I'm keeping track of them correctly. But as we're leading up to E3, like we were talking about, there are so many big announcements that come out of the show. When it comes to Xbox at E3 or Xbox in general, what's the big memory that stands out for you?
So mine is, it makes me sound like I'm not an Xbox fan. So full disclosure, my brothers and I had an Xbox like the Christmas it came out, right? Like Halo dropped and all that good stuff. So my earliest memory of Xbox, and like the one that I always think about whenever I think of it, is definitely when I was laying in bed Christmas Eve, and I'm the youngest of 4. My 2 older brothers really wanted that Xbox. They thought Halo looked amazing. Like I remember seeing the demo in Toys R Us and us them losing their minds while I'm staring at like Luigi's Mansion, and I'm like, oh my God, this looks amazing. Yeah. Look at Luigi, he looks so real. So I'm laying in my bed Christmas Eve, like praying to God, like all I want is a GameCube. Like I do not want an Xbox at all. This looks terrible. Like this is not my bag. So like, at this point, this is what, 2000 is when the original Xbox came out? 2001?
Yeah, I think it was 2001 is when Halo dropped, because it's the 20th anniversary of Xbox and Halo going into 21.
Yeah. So I would have been 8. So I was like pretty young for it, right? And there was controller. I mean, the Duke, like it's massive.
Yeah, it's a huge controller. I mean, you're looking at like, it's something, I mean, for the video viewers out there, it's at least this big minimally, you know?
Yeah.
It's chunkier than the Xbox Series X controller by far.
Yeah. So everything about this console just wasn't for a little kid at this point. The next day, you know, Christmas comes. Obviously, we get an Xbox, and I am devastated. Like, I did not want this thing in my home. And my mom, bless her heart, wanted to make me feel better about it. And, like, this is such, like, I'm a spoiled brat, and I should have been grateful that I got anything at all. But, like, you know, people have it worse off. Got me the Shrek video game, which is, like, a notorious, like... if you look at the Xbox launch lineup, it was like, oh God, like who would have bought that? That was like what I did that Christmas break, was play that game.
That is,
but
rough.
Then like it was bad. Like as time went on, and I got that in Oddworld Munch's Odyssey, and I remember enjoying that quite a bit. But you know, then I started to play Halo, got introduced to it, really enjoyed it. And then, I mean, that was it. Like, we didn't have a PS2 when I was growing up. The following year, I got a GameCube, and, like, that was my jam. But for the most part, it took me a little bit I had to, like, age into Xbox. And then the 360 generation, that was it, man. Like, that was all I played for years until, like, the tail end of the PS3's life cycle. And then I finally, you know, started to get into PlayStation. But
yeah, it's funny you bring that kind of thing up, because obviously, like, I started an Xbox podcast because this generation, like, I'm really into Xbox. And throughout the redemption arc of, like, last gen, you know, whenever Microsoft really started to hit their stride with, like, Game Pass and all of the good stuff that they had going,
right.
That's whenever I really developed a huge passion and, like, a respect for what Microsoft is doing. But beginning of last gen, super PlayStation guy, you know, and then growing up, I had PS1 as my first console, PS2 is my next. And so it's that kind of evolution. But the Xbox brand came into it for me whenever I went over to a friend's house and he had Halo 2, you know. And so as a middle school kid diving into Halo 2 for the first time and having that kind of multiplayer experience, you know, like you said, it took me a while to get into it, obviously, because I didn't have the console in the home. But as soon as I did, I was like, this is it. And then, like you said, the Xbox 360 just changed the game when it came to that entire situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom, there's like, I don't even know to this day how much she spent on it. But like, there's another story where I went to a buddy's house for his, he was like the rich friend when I was growing up. And his birthday was right before Christmas, so his parents got him a 360 like the week it launched or whatever it was. And like we, you know, sleep over, go over, and I remember watching Call of Duty 2 and being like, you can see their breath. This is insane. Like Perfect Dark Zero was incredible. And I went home and just wouldn't shut up about it for weeks. My mom spent like easily over $1,000 for one on eBay. Like, I have to get one for him for Christmas. It's all he wants.
Yeah, it's kind of insane how actually powerful the first Xbox is whenever you go back and like retroactively look at the graphics as they were back then. I don't know if you saw it. You probably did. But the updated Halo Master Chief Collection graphics for Combat Evolved, they're like putting out a patch where they put in the original textures versus what I think it was it by Visceral Games, the port?
It was that or Gearbox, maybe?
Gearbox. I think
remember.
It's Gearbox.
Yeah. So, yeah, they had that PC version that, like, the coolest thing in that was it had the flamethrower. Because obviously that wasn't, if you old-time fans will remember, that wasn't on the original Xbox release. And if you're really old, you remember you didn't have Xbox Live, and you had to, like, go through IRC chats and play on Xbox Connect, which was, like, some app, or, like, just some Windows application someone made. Where you could play over like a DSL connection. So we did that for a long time until Halo 2 came out and live and all that. But I'm dating myself for sure.
I was going to say, like, so you said you were 8 whenever the original Xbox dropped, right?
Yeah.
So I was 4 at that point. So like that,
man.
so that's beyond me, you know, like I wasn't even around. I think I was probably just getting into where I was playing like Jack and Daxter and Sly Cooper, if those were even out yet. Maybe. I'm trying to figure out those timelines in my mind. But all of that's beside the point. E3, very exciting time. Plenty of hype coming in. And this week we had the announcement of June 13th, 1 p.m. Eastern. You've got the Microsoft show and the Bethesda show that are coming together into one big event this year. What are your thoughts on that, especially in the comparison, or I suppose in relation to the acquisition that hit last year? How do you feel about this kind of combined show?
I think it's the best move for Bethesda, for sure. I think that conference was, for a long time, was a little bloated. Like every year it would end and it was like half of this stuff we didn't need to see. A lot of this could have been a press release, and it was a lot of fluff. The other bit, I don't know. I mean, Xbox needs to. They're in a position now where they like. Obviously, Game Pass is really like the main selling point, you know, for everybody. Getting consoles into people's homes is always very important. But if you can get them into that subscription service, they really just have to get people who are like me, who are like, I have a Series X, but like just teetering over the edge of like, what am I really gonna like? Go head first into this generation, like is it going to be Sony or is it going to be Xbox? You need to give them a reason. And I think while Halo Infinite is exciting and, you know, is very good and or looks very good and all that, they need to be able to get at least on par with what the first party PlayStation is putting out or has been putting out, at least over the last generation. That being said, I think what Bethesda is going to... I don't even know what Bethesda has to show at this point, other than Starfield. And there's that horror game with that woman that everybody's obsessed with on Twitter. I can't remember her name. She's like, oh, hello! Like, she's just, like, super excited to, like,
I'm not even familiar with that one,
whatever.
honestly.
I can't remember that. It's like Ghostwire Tokyo?
Oh, yes, Ghostwire Tokyo. Isn't that I think it's a timed PlayStation exclusive.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a timed PlayStation exclusive, if I remember correctly. If not full,
okay.
I know that obviously, like with the Final Fantasy VII remake situation, you know, the more money Sony throws at somebody, the longer that exclusivity period can go. So whatever timed means, it could be timed indefinitely. I don't know, but yeah, there is that game coming out as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm definitely interested to see Starfield. I don't think we're going to see Elder Scrolls for literally years.
Yeah,
which is crazy because 6 came out 10 years ago this year.
Yeah, I think
5. Yeah,
wasn't it that right now Skyrim is further away from Morrowind than whenever Skyrim was really, or it's something like that where it's like we're further away from Skyrim than we were when Skyrim released in comparison to Morrowind.
Right.
Yeah, that's insane. But I'm totally on the same boat. The people that think that we're going to see anything definitively as far as a release date goes or any kind of even release time frame, you might get like a 2023 splash screen at the end of a trailer, but that is it. And that would be a horrible decision for them to even put 2023 on it, in my opinion.
No, yeah. I mean, I imagine, and I forget where they finally landed on it, but like the Elder Scrolls or the Skyrim engine, you know, that they've been building Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and all that good stuff. When Fallout 4 came out, it was like super dated. And especially because you had it in that stark comparison where you were looking at The Witcher 3 and then you're looking at this game and it was like, sure, it's Fallout and that's all well and good, but like it's super buggy. It's not very well optimized, all that good stuff. I think Starfield runs on their new engine, or at least it's an updated version of it.
Yeah, they announced that whenever there was the big that sit down couch kind of like, like it's almost like a pair of parents that are getting married, where it's like we have something to, we have something to tell you, like this is what this means for you. And then they talked about the Starfield engine and how it's completely and totally new.
Yeah. So I imagine they will take what they've learned from that, at least post launch of that game, and then the Elder Scrolls side of it is going to be, I don't know, maybe take 2 years of like just optimization and trying to make that as good as it can be. But honestly, like I'm in the mindset of like there's so much coming out already, or that is out just on Game Pass in general, like they're in a good enough position they can take their time. I don't think we're all. I mean, I'm sure people are clamoring for it, but like, for God's sake, we can't even see Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And people are losing their minds over that.
Yeah.
I don't even care about that game.
That's like, it's one of those fables at this point, not like Fable, the actual franchise, but it's just, if Elden Ring happens, I put that on the same tier as like Bloodborne on PC, where it's like, I'll believe it when I see it. I feel like it could be happening, but at the same time, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. But I'm excited to see more of Starfield for sure. A lot of people were looking forward to it this holiday. Obviously, Jason Schreier, and the tweet came out last week where he was like, late 2022, I'll leave it up to Bethesda for them to release a time frame for that. And then I was listening to Unlocked, obviously from, the IGN team a couple of days back, and they were talking more about the potential for it to release in 2021. If it were, like just in a hypothetical, far-fetched world, let's say Starfield is set for 2021, is that a good idea to put it head to head with Halo Infinite, even though they are such different experiences?
I think you could, yeah. I think you almost do what Sony did with like Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima, because they were very different games. Where obviously Halo coming out in November, either Starfield would have to drop like early December or late October. It's probably the only way that works. I think the only other option would be like they do that thing where it's coming out in winter and then it actually means like February.
Yeah.
Where people are still like, at least if you're on the East Coast, like you're hunkered down inside with nothing else to do because it's just too dang cold to go outside.
That's true.
I think that could work. I don't know, man. Bethesda's weird now because like I feel like they were one of the first people that really introduced that thing of like, we're going to make a game and not tell you, and then all of a sudden it just comes out 6 months later. Like they did that with Fallout 4 at least.
Yeah, it's wild to see what Bethesda does. Their strategy changed very, quickly, because they used to be that company where something's announced and then it comes out in a few years in my mind. Like there was always that waiting period, and then they started dropping stuff pretty rapidly. But, it goes back to what Todd Howard said during that. They had one of those Zoom call kind of situations with the Xbox guys and the Bethesda guys. And Major Nelson asked about Starfield, and, Todd Howard famously, where he's just like, a lot of hype for a game that no one's seen yet and that no one knows anything about. And that's what blows my mind, is that you see all of this excitement around it. And I get it, because it's the first new Bethesda IP in, I think, 20 or 25 years. One of those where they've been riffing on Elder Scrolls and Fallout basically for over 2 decades. And so obviously there are other like Bethesda entities out there. Like I think about the Evil Within, even though that's kind of like its own little thing. But you're looking at Starfield, and this is effectively being built up to be the next Elder Scrolls, the next Fallout, one of those big, industry defining things for the next 25 years. But who's saying these things? In my in my mind, like, I'm saying these things and everybody's like, yeah, it feels like the next thing. No one's pitched it as this. No one said it's going to be the next Elder Scrolls. This is just a new idea in my mind. So
and, I mean, we know for sure we may, and it's like, this is literally how little I follow this game because we've seen so little of it, so I just don't care yet. It is an open world, quote unquote, like space type game.
Yeah,
right?
effectively,
like a Mass Effect almost.
That's what I'm getting from it. It in my mind, what we have from the screenshots that have leaked and what has been said so far, it feels like a more serious version of the Outer Worlds in my mind.
Okay.
That's the way that I'm processing it. Like it's almost like a Prey and a Fallout had an affair with Outer Worlds, and somehow they all congealed together. Like that's the way. It's some kind of, this mutant kind of child. That's the way that I see Starfield. Yeah. And again, like you said, how much do any of us know about Starfield aside from that small little teaser and a couple of like grainy screenshots that may or may not actually be legitimate versions of the game that are coming out?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, it reminds me, it has a lot of No Man's Sky energy behind it in terms of just like the excitement level for, and I don't know. I mean, I guess No Man's Sky we saw a good amount before that came out. But like that was a situation where like they showed the game, the UI was completely different when it launched, like, you know, and everybody knows that whole tale at this point. I won't go into all that, but like for just as little as we know about it, I'm always amazed at just the gaming community in general. Whenever like an idea is placed, granted, if Phil Spencer comes out at E3 and with a bear and bird on his shirt and says that Banjo 3 is coming out, and that's all we see of it, like, I'll lose my mind. But
yeah, I mean, everybody's got that little thing that they would lose their mind over. You know, like for me, I've been playing. This is stupid, and this is not any kind of comparison to what you're talking about with Banjo-Kazooie. But if there was another, like a Halo Spartan Assault kind of top-down dual thumbstick deal that was released,
really,
I love that stuff. And like, I understand that right now that's a $2.99 game on the Windows Store, but like if that was just a throwaway announcement during the show, I would be thrilled about that, because I love that kind of like
Gears Funko or whatever that was.
I never played that. Was that a top down dual stick?
That was a almost like a Mario Rabbids type of game, like a real time strategy.
Yeah, I like
kind of.
I like Gears Tactics, like the big, you know, beefy version, and I feel like Gears Pop is just a different version of that. I like the spin-offs where you have, you know, a franchise that's been traditionally first-person shooter or third-person shooter. Whenever they take that and they flip it on its head, and then all of a sudden it's some kind of top-down situation or an arcade game. I love that kind of stuff. But if there was a Spartan Assault, there was a sequel to Spartan Assault, but another one of those, a third one in the franchise, like I would love that kind of stuff. But it's that kind of excitement, those little drops that get me pumped about E3. But like you said, there has to be some kind of major announcement from Microsoft that is in the same vein as something like Sony's God of War, you know, debuts. Or, you know it better than anyone, that first trailer for The Last of Us 2, you know, where you have the dance hall scene and it's, you know, Ellie's back and it's just this very energetic, upbeat settlement kind of music. There has to be some kind of announcement. There has to be some kind of energy to bring more people into Xbox, because this is a very pivotal E3, you know?
There's a lot that I feel like they have to do right. They're playing a weird game where one of the things is that they have to figure out is obviously the games. The other, I think, is services, and I think that's where they could potentially like really get a lot of wins this year. A couple weeks ago, oh my God, Gabe Newell came out and was like, hey, somebody asked the question of like whether or not we should expect to see Steam on other platforms. And he's like, well, we'll have an answer for you before the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of partnership there, whether it is you're starting to see, because for all intents and purposes, like between variable refresh rates and Game Pass and this like unified system between Xbox and PC, we're like pretty much there.
Yeah.
Like just cut the umbilical cord and just say I can play my Steam games on my Xbox. That, I think, has a very good chance of happening. The other one, before I get to like a game prediction of like, oh my God, that I think we have to see, or I was thinking about this in the shower and got more excited as I was thinking about it before I hopped on here. So Phil Spencer comes out. The Switch Pro has already been announced, because they're saying this thing is supposed to, like, you know, we're supposed to see it before E3. It's not going to be like the big focus point of E3, and it's supposed to come out before the end of the year. My guess is Phil Spencer comes out playing Halo Infinite on a Switch Pro, and he's like, hey, this is coming to Game Pass, or, you know, Halo Infinite coming to Game Pass. Game Pass is available on the Nintendo Switch Pro day one, whenever it launches. You know, have at it. Because the current Switch, the Wi-Fi is so terrible, I don't think they're going to use that to promote like xCloud and things like that. But I feel like there's something there where they're like, we're pushing xCloud to Nintendo platforms. They've spent too much time building that partnership, and I feel like we haven't had the mic drop moment that Sony had at the beginning of last generation, where Jack Tretton comes out and he's like, hey, used games or you know, your buddy's games or whatever, you can pop it in your PlayStation, you're good to go. Like, nobody's done that yet.
Yeah.
And I know part of it has to do with COVID-19 and, you know, not being in front of a live audience and things like that. But if Xbox gets like one or two of those moments of everyone just being like, I mean, the Bethesda acquisition, I guess, was one. But like that could be a huge game changer. I could totally be wrong, but like there's too much chit chatter between those two companies for something to not be going on.
Yeah, definitely. And especially whenever you look at like the backgrounds of the calls that they've been having, and you see all of these Nintendo Switches that are just scattered around. And as we all know at this point, especially when it comes to Phil Spencer and other executives at Microsoft, that background is meticulously picked, whether it's just to let you know that Phil Spencer enjoys the world of Nintendo, or if it's to say that there's some kind of big announcement coming. There is a reason for it being there. And so I agree that there's probably something going on with the Nintendo. And I think back to the cloud version of Control, and that kind of stuff, where you can play beefier games already on the base Switch hardware through the cloud. Now, the experience is hit or miss depending on so many elements based on your connection and stuff like that. But with the Switch Pro, like you said, if there was a better networking card in it, obviously we've heard the rumors about the new NVIDIA GPUs, the little Tegra chips that they're putting in there. I think it's still NVIDIA, I assume.
Yeah, it's NVIDIA. Part of it is someone wrote that they may have DLSS enabled as well on those chips, which would be like the first like NVIDIA mobile chip that would have that. I don't know. I mean, not that this is not a Nintendo podcast by any means, but I think there's a good chance that if that were to happen, that's the way to do it, where it's like, okay, whether I have a gaming PC and I have a Nintendo Switch for my Nintendo games, like that's a perfect world for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like right now Nintendo is hitting such a stride with the Nintendo Switch that to release the same style of console as you saw with a PS4 to a PS4 Pro, and then to an Xbox, One to an Xbox. Obviously you had the One S, but then obviously the One X is the big one. That was really the leap forward, to be able to emulate that and go beyond something that you saw in the 3DS with just the new 3DS that came out, which was, for all intents and purposes, basically a regular 3DS with a couple of bells and whistles added onto it. But if there is a Nintendo Switch Pro, that's a huge opportunity to expand not only the capabilities, like you said, getting in on the Xbox ecosystem and getting Game Pass integrated there, but to expand the lifespan of the Switch. You could easily see this being beyond a decade, of Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily at this rate.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of like games though, like specifically I went way on a tangent there. I can't, and maybe it's just because I'm so like obsessed with it. I literally can't think of another franchise other than Banjo-Kazooie, like in terms of an old franchise that we haven't seen in a while. Like, I'd love to say Jade Empire, but like BioWare's just not going to make that. Perfect Dark we're already getting. I think you see gameplay of that this year. I don't know that I don't think we get that game this year. But I think they need to have at least one big thing. I mean, everybody's anticipating Psychonauts 2, and it's like, oh my God, it's going to drop like, during E3. Like, okay, like we get it.
Yeah,
not that that's not exciting, but I think it's very predictable. They have something. I just don't know what it's going to end up being. Yeah,
and I mean, I get the Psychonauts love. It's a game that I didn't play back in the day, but it's one that I've started playing now because I think a couple of years ago it was $2, and I threw it into my cart during an Xbox sale. But again, all due respect to Double Fine and Tim Schafer and everything they've accomplished, that's just not a system seller. And there's a reason.
No.
It's a throwaway, E3 announcement where right now you see, the leak that it's already out on the Xbox store. You can preload it. Like, we all know it's coming out during E3. And that's fine. It's just, again, one of those free, gimmies for Game Pass, because they're going to do the big dollar for 3 months push. They're going to do all of the stuff to get as many people excited on that day. And they're going to drive home that messaging of, hey, don't have an Xbox Series X or S? Don't worry about it. We're on mobile. We're on PC. If you have an Xbox One, which I'm sure GameStop has a stack of at this point, you can pick one of those bad boys up and get some Game Pass action on that. But they're going to be driving that home a lot. And so Psychonauts 2 is just an easy win for that. Obviously, for me, one of the big games that I'm looking forward to and that I guarantee you, obviously, that we're going to see is Forza Horizon 5. Like that's gotta be.
Oh, sure.
And then if you look at the graphic that was released, and for the Xbox players and those that are super into gaming news and stuff, the graphic for E3 has the Halo Reach team on it. You've got at the bottom the Starfield Starfield. I've been saying the name so much. That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, my mind just went blank. But you've got the Starfield logo at the bottom, and then somebody pointed out on Twitter in the top left, it looks like a tire. It looks like a tire that's rotating. And so, we've had leaks about the Mexico setting. We've got a couple of car leaks from Hot Wheels where you see.
I was going to say, did you see the Hot Wheels one? I think they said it. Somebody mentioned there may be a September release for that.
Yeah, and that feels
somewhere
right for me.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, and it's been so long. And don't get me wrong, I love Forza Horizon 4. During my entire Christmas time frame last year, that's all I played, basically.
Sure.
And so to be able to get back into that kind of mode and to really see what the Series X and S can do for Forza. We had the upgrade for Forza Horizon 4, but that's kind of one of those, this is our first rodeo. We're just getting into the new generation. Let's see what this system can really do whenever it's fully optimized. That's what I would love to see, and that's kind of like what I expect. I'm betting Forza and Halo are going to dominate. There's got to be some kind of RPG in there because of how hard Microsoft has been pushing RPGs, I think.
I think you see Avowed, whether or not... I think that's an early 2022 game, though. I don't know that comes out this year. I think what I'm having a hard time with, just in general, is what happens after June. Because, just the landscape overall. You have Mario Golf, you have Ratchet and Clank, and then E3 happens, and it's like there's this giant gap between July and November, and I'm like, well, something has to go here.
Yeah.
And in terms of it has to be a lot of new IP or games that we haven't seen in a while, which I know I think probably sounds pretty obvious. It's just the first year, really, the first 12 months of any generation is a little awkward. I was going to make another point. It's all right. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
it's fine.
No worries.
It'll come back to me.
It will come back. But you're right, though. The first 12 months of any generation is rough, but especially with COVID, so many of those launch games that were probably not even, announced to the public, those that were prepping for an announcement, and then they got to that point and they said, there's no way we can do this. We saw, today we had the Dying Light 2 Stay Alive, I think is what it's now called. But we had
Stay Human.
What?
It's something weird.
I got to look it up. Yeah.
I think, was it you that tweeted about it? It was like, why?
I was like, why is
this
this like? Yeah.
Yeah, please stay human or something. And I was like, I mean, sure, if you're in a zombie apocalypse, it would be better that you not turn into a zombie.
Right. Yeah.
That's an interesting. I almost wonder, is that a translation issue?
I don't understand why that they would choose to do that. But yeah, so it's Dying Light 2 Stay Human. And somebody replied to me on Twitter and said that it's because the main character is infected. They reveal that in the trailer. It's not really like a spoiler or anything. But I hope to God it's not like Dying Light 2 where I have to find Zombrex every 20 minutes, and keep my arm alive or whatever. But you look at Dying Light 2 where that game has been pushed back time and time again. And now we're tentatively looking at December. And so, like you said, there are so many games that I'm sure we're going to drop between July and November that just will get pushed back to 2022. I think next year is when we're going to just see a sea of not only small little indies that hit development issues, but these Goliaths where you just have so many big games that are dropping in such a tight time frame. I think it's going to become very overwhelming.
I think that is one piece of it, though, right? It is not only just the developers that, everybody had to adapt to working from home and all that good stuff. The other part of it is just getting consoles out there. People still can't find a Series X or a Series S or whatever it is that they want to play on. And from the looks of it that we've seen in whether, you're trying to buy a car or a computer or whatever, that is not stopping anytime soon. Which is almost weirder because now you have people that like, you're starting to return to normal life if you're fully vaccinated and da-da-da-da. So you would think that like less people want to get in on it, but now it's like the new hotness that, hey, here's this new console. Like I really want to, experience all this great stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are definitely situations that I kind of, Halo Infinite being one of them, just based on things that I've heard, that game was not ready for November, like at all. I think it was, I want to say May of last year before it was delayed, April or May, like right before, 2 or 3 weeks before it. I had heard from someone in that studio that they were like, we have all the pieces together for a campaign, but no one has played it from start to finish.
Yeah, that's very
and we don't even know if it's like a cohesive thing. And I was like, that's not good.
No.
Like this is one of the biggest franchises on the planet. And they can't risk it. They've had two, Halo 5 burned for too many people for this game to fail. So like whatever time Microsoft wants them to take or needs them to take, they're going to take it. I think the game will launch this year. Absolutely. But outside of that, like, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have your usual suspects. You're going to have your Forza. But I think you're right. Next year is going to be the one where, and I don't even think you have to wait till E3. I think it's like Game Awards happens. You get that first half or like the first 3 months with a lot of drops just out of nowhere. But I think you're also going to see a lot of dates moving, similar to what we saw with the movie industry. Like, you have these, what was it? I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of them where, movie X was going to come out on this day, and they had to get out of the way of a Marvel movie because we're not going to make any money if we do that.
Yeah, I think last week there was one day where John Wick, the new John Wick was supposed to come out alongside the new Matrix. And that was something that was tweeted in, like, I want to say 2017 or something. And then somebody tweeted, I think it was Daniel Ahmad. It might have been Nibelian. But just to see like that kind of thing, you're completely right, though. I think that we're going to see a lot of dates pushed. And I think that a lot of developers are going to be eating their words when it comes to, if they're aiming for, let's say, even February 2022, you'll see that pushed back to fall 2022, I think is the kind of stuff you'll be seeing.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, like you said, any developer that needs more time should take it, obviously. And in the case of Halo Infinite, I don't have any kind of inside sources. I'm just a dude that spends way too much time on Twitter, But just looking at the reaction to the July showcase from last year, it was clear that if that game had launched, it would have not only hurt the reputation of Halo as a franchise, but it would have really impacted the Series X and S, because I think the reception for both of those consoles, like this Xbox generation, really solid so far. Like, people are really loving the Xbox Series X and S way more than obviously the Xbox One. I feel like we're getting back to that 360 level. But if you have a game like Halo Infinite that has been in development for so long, and like you said, coming off of Halo 5, which the multiplayer, you either loved it or you hated it, but the campaign in Halo 5 was just a mess, you have to nail it. And this is 343's last chance to really get it right and still keep that fanfare. And Halo is such an important franchise for Xbox. I mean, you see the marketing between the 20th anniversary of Xbox and the 20th anniversary of Halo completely intertwined. And that really says it all, where you just have such a level of importance on this game that it can't be bad. Even if it gets delayed into 2022, if you got to do it, do it, because that's such an important game that will define this console.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that that always like sticks in the back of my mind is, if you think about, if I was 10 years old when Halo 4 came out, Halo has not been that good throughout my entire teenage experience. And that is insane to me because, you and I lived through Halo 2, Halo 3, ODST, like all these crazy experiences. And these people just don't have that. They're like, yeah, Master Chief Collection, it didn't run well for 3 years. Like, you couldn't even matchmake.
Yeah, that was so devastating. Because
for everyone.
Yeah, because like I had gotten a PS4 at the beginning of the last generation. And so I had been, super into the Battlefields, playing The Last of Us Remastered, that kind of early generation stuff. I want to say God of War, like not the new one, but one of the remakes of, or a port of 3. But that kind of stuff I had been playing. And so then I get an Xbox One and I'm like, finally, I get to go back and dive into Halo again. And so the matchmaking is just going for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, I know there are people playing Halo. I know.
It's Halo.
It's Halo. I'm on an Xbox One. There's got to be people playing Halo. But yeah, that kind of stuff absolutely can happen, and it's very important that they get that right to avoid that kind of reception for sure.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think obviously like Xbox Live, Microsoft Azure, all that good stuff has really come a long way. Like that infrastructure is insane. I don't think those are the kinds of problems that we have. I think it's more like mechanically, does this make sense? Or like, who are you making this game for? Like, I think they're in an interesting spot, 343, where you have to either, like, I don't know if they go the route where it's like, hey, we're going to cater to this original audience more, who like that slower pace, kind of like, you're going it through these tight corridors and things like that, like you did in the original Halo. Or is it, we're competing with Call of Duty, and you have the sprint and you have all these other abilities? I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to see more about it, but I don't know.
That's kind of where I'm at with it, because you probably saw this clip too, where during that big reveal, the overall shitty July showcase reveal that was last year, there was the guy where he's like, he's not sprinting. There's no sprinting. And then he's like, yes. And then he pushes no, he's sprinting. There's this huge like devastation whenever he actually starts sprinting. And that captures the Halo audience in such a defined way, because you have people, like you said, they grew up on Halo 2 and they love that. It's almost like Quake in a way, where like everybody's running on that same pace. Everybody's moving in the same direction towards these, if you're playing Slayer, these powerful weapons in the middle of the map, versus something like you saw in Halo 4 or Halo 5, where it's just, jumping, sliding, boosting, like you're moving all over the place. And so it'll be interesting to see how they balance that. I think Halo, if they want it to or not, inherently competes with Call of Duty in terms of mind share. If you have a Battlefield coming out this year, if you have a Call of Duty coming out this year, unfortunately for 343, they are competing in some kind of way, shape, or form with Battlefield and with Call of Duty, because between these three groups, those players are largely the same,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm playing all three of these games this holiday season, and I understand that Halo is going to be an arena shooter. For the most part, who knows what it could evolve into, because we still haven't seen multiplayer at all.
Right.
So it could be anything at this point. I would assume it's going to be something akin to what we've been seeing with Master Chief. But, you've got that arena, you've got that arcade with Call of Duty, and then you've got that huge large-scale warfare with Battlefield. And so these are three different experiences. But for somebody that's not, the hardcore player, you're looking at the store and you're like, gun, first-person shooter, which one do I want? And for somebody that doesn't have Game Pass, and for somebody who's just trying to pick out what game they want to spend, $60 to $70 in the case of Call of Duty, 70. EA on the fence about it. We've seen them do a couple of things here and there. They've got to pick, and Microsoft has to prove that, you need an Xbox, you need Halo Infinite, and that's really hard to do against Call of Duty and Battlefield.
Here's a question for you. How much influence do you think Warzone and Fortnite have had on the direction of Halo Infinite and its multiplayer?
I think that I would assume that 343 is planning some kind of large-scale battle royale. We've seen, I think it was called Warzone in Halo 5. Yeah, we saw Warzone in Halo 5 where it was kind of that big PvPvE situation in a way. But I think there has to be some kind of battle royale, and if they aren't looking at that, then they need to be looking at that. It's a step in the right direction, and I think that, to answer your question, Warzone influenced the decision to make Halo Infinite multiplayer free to play, because that has been confirmed. So that's fully, available for everyone. And that's very significant to have a cross-play, cross-progression, free-to-play game that is Halo on PC, Xbox Series X, Series S, and Xbox One. And I think that right out of the gate, that makes that at least a competitor in the space, because this is a really weird comparison, but Knockout City, the new dodgeball game that, launched on Game Pass.
I have to play this. It's on my PS4
It's so
or PS5
fun,
right now.
dude. I was so shocked because I downloaded it as kind of like, in a way, it's like in my mind Psychonauts, where you have this throwaway game, and I'm like, sure, it's on Game Pass, fuck it, whatever. So I download it, and then like 6 hours later, here I am playing dodgeball, But the fact that it's on Game Pass makes it something that I'm going to download, and it's that free element. It's free for me, and so for Fortnite, for Warzone, for any of the free-to-play games that are out there, it gives them a leg up just because it's accessible to anybody that has one of the pieces of hardware. So I think that free element is what really influenced Halo Infinite from Warzone and Fortnite. We'll see if there's a BR. Do you think it needs a BR?
Where do you stand on BR? You personally?
It's so hard because in college I got really into PUBG. I want to say I spent near 200 hours in PUBG. So I played a lot of it on PC. Now in that time, I think I got 6 kills. But I spent a ton of time in PUBG. I spent a lot of time in Apex Legends. I spent a good chunk of time in Fortnite. But after I learned, the setup of a BR, I'm good. Like I'll dive in and play an update or something, but it's not something that continuously brings me back. Warzone just doesn't do it for me because it's such a time investment to get up to that, It feels weird using the word climax, but it feels weird to work your way up to the climax of Warzone and then just get shit on. And so then I'm back to square one. And it's even worse with PUBG, where you've spent 45 minutes going across a field, crawling, like army crawling across. And then all of a sudden you get sniped from like 6 miles away. So,
yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think, a younger Chris Shriver would really be into them. If it was the summer of 2021, I was out of school and had nothing else to do, then that's absolutely what I'm doing till 4 a.m. with all my friends. But I'm just not in that part in my life anymore. And everyone that I've tried, none of them have ever grabbed me. I've literally ran around for about an hour and a half and gone, oh, I get what this is, and then immediately left because I'm like, there's not enough hours in the day between work. And there are too many other games that I can enjoy to the fullest extent just because of either their length or their features or whatever, that I'd rather do. It's just not for me. I mean, I know plenty of people my age that work just as much as I do that are absolutely obsessed with them, and that's all they play, and I'm very happy for them. But I don't think Halo Infinite needs a BR. I think it will have one, though, and I will never touch it.
Yeah, and to be fair, I look to a game like Call of Duty Cold War or Black Ops Cold War if you want to get, specific about it. But, if you're looking at what they bring to the table, they've got a campaign that this year you could tell that it was heavily impacted by COVID because it was very brief, and that last chunk was very work from home. You could tell that it was.
Have you ever seen that documentary of them, how they made it?
No, but I would love to.
It's on IGN site. Not to plug, but it is pretty crazy how they managed to actually put it together in that and crunch it in that small of amount of time.
Yeah, send me the link to that, and actually I'll probably put it below this video on YouTube because that's something that I would be interested in sharing, especially with that last chunk of it where it's just the same repetition over and over again, where it's like a flashback as he's breaking out of the mental, the mental space that he's in. But for Black Ops Cold War and for the last few Call of Duties, you've got a campaign with a narrative, you've got zombies, and you've got multiplayer, and then you've got BR. So really you have these 4 pillars. And for me, I never touch zombies. I touch the campaign and I dabble in multiplayer, and then I don't even touch Battle Royale. For, a huge section of people that are on YouTube and Twitch and all of that, zombies is all they play. And so if you're looking in that regard, they never touch campaign. They probably don't even touch multiplayer or Battle Royale. Then you have Warzone that is all that a large, swath of people play. So when it comes to Halo, having the Battle Royale is more so a gateway drug into, if somebody tries the battle royale and the gunplay is great and the weapons are well balanced, then they might say, okay, I need to subscribe to Game Pass so that I can get that campaign. I'm interested to see it. I'm interested in getting into that arena-based multiplayer. What is Slayer? For people that have never heard of it, they dive in and they might fall in love with arena-based shooters. So I think it's important in that gateway drug kind of functionality where somebody might not necessarily be on board with Halo, but they could because of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it too, is like the gateway drug into the Xbox ecosystem. Because everybody knows that is synonymously, even if you look at like Gears of War, not saying that people look at Gears of War and they're like, it's a PlayStation game, but like it's big, but I don't know that it's like, my mom doesn't know what Gears of War is. Like, I could say Halo and she's like, oh, the green guy. Like she knows exactly who Master Chief is.
Yeah. And that's something that Microsoft, they've struggled with for a long time, and it's something they continue to struggle with because as somebody who's been digging into the Xbox ecosystem, I think about Xbox and I think about all of the Rare games that are in Rare Replay. I think about, obviously, Halo, but on top of that, Forza is a big one. I think about, looking at Gears of War, like you mentioned. I think about all of these games that Perfect Dark is an example of one that's Rare, but that's also their Fable. There are all these big franchises that are coming in, but at the same time, it's like in the public eye, they've got to get more mind share because PlayStation is Ratchet and Clank. Now PlayStation is Spider-Man.
Which is insane.
Yeah, like the brand association they've managed to nail with getting PlayStation and Spider-Man. And really Marvel, if you look at what happened with the Avengers, which I'm sure did not, the ROI on that deal was not there. Yeah.
There's no way. I would love to know how many, not concurrent players, but like just sales numbers wise, how many units did that actually move on an Xbox? It has to be like ridiculously low.
I don't even know what happened with Avengers. Like Crystal Dynamics, such a huge, name in my mind. Like, how did that happen?
Unfortunately, I think it's the type of situation where there's too much going on. There's too much that you're trying to achieve to the point where like you're not doing anything well. And because of like what the Avengers are, like that kind of game works if you're like, I'm going to make an Iron Man game and he has all sorts of different abilities and like we're going to cater the game around this. Instead, what you've done is you've made this very cookie cutter like action experience that like, sure, your characters have different abilities, but even them, they're limited in their movesets and things like that. And every single one of them has to adapt to that same level that another character may be in. For like co-op stuff, obviously there's like Hulk specific missions and things like that. But yeah, that game, I never made it through it. I think I got maybe 3 hours into the campaign on the PS5 and I was out.
Yeah, I never even picked it up. I watched some gameplay on day one, but it was such a weird game, not to get too off topic. And obviously we're getting pretty long in the tooth with the show, but I don't want to keep you all night. I know you've got other things to do. But for the Avengers, it felt like it was like if you had set super high expectations for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. And you made it out to be this huge thing. Like if you had marketed this as a very high-end Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and maybe even said that in the marketing, then people would have been on board with what it was because they were like, this is a really good-looking co-op Avengers game. Probably not going to be great, but it's going to be fun. And so,
but it's not only that. It's sorry to cut you off. Good. It's the post-game content. Like it's not only like just the repetition of it, but like the release schedule of new content that you are providing to this game. Like I have spent more time in the last generation playing Destiny 2 than I have any other game. I hate that game so much and I love it so much. But at the very least, what I know about it is that every 3 months I'm getting new content. It may not be great. It may not be, and it may not blow my socks off. Not everything is going to be Forsaken, but like I know it's there. Avengers, it's like, all right, fall just came and went. So like, are we getting anything or we're not? Okay, cool. Like it's just too much of mixed messaging and like too much uncertainty because like the player base is too low. So now it's like, are they even going to bother making anything? But I heard about Wakanda. Like it's very odd.
Yeah, it's straight. They have that entire release, the DLC timeline where I think Battle for Wakanda, I think is what it's called, is coming out in late 2021. Like that's what is hypothetical. And then you have this Spider-Man DLC for PlayStation that still hasn't dropped.
We haven't seen it. Like I don't even know what that character model looks like.
That's what blows my mind is that, you know, Sony spent so much money and the outrage, you know, around Spider-Man being locked to PlayStation. Don't worry about it because no one has him, you know. I don't understand how, not to like keep dogging on Crystal Dynamics because I'm sure there's an explanation behind the scenes, but damn, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a great situation. And like full disclosure, like Josh's wife, who I do the podcast with, like is a writer on that team. Like we have had conversations about like how that's I mean, obviously, you know, she's still doing her thing, but like it puts me in a weird position because I'm like, she's working, you know, as hard as she can on this game, and like obviously it's not just all on her shoulders, but I'm like, dude, what happened? Like, I don't know. I think it's just there's too much going on in it, like I said before. But it's a shame because, you know, you want every game to be good, especially Avengers. Like there hasn't been the Arkham Asylum really of like the Marvel universe. I feel like Marvel Ultimate Alliance is the closest thing you've got to it.
Yeah.
And even that, it's like that's for you or it's not.
Yeah, I think that obviously the best game we've gotten from the Marvel universe is Spider-Man on PS4, and then you know, Miles Morales. You can almost loop those in together because it's kind of like a big standalone DLC in a way.
Yeah.
But you know, those games are what I would want to see. I would love to see, you know, independent spin-offs of this, not monetized beyond belief. Obviously that's like, you know, a capitalism wet dream to be able to make all of these, you know, all of these sub franchises into their own independent games. But an Iron Man and all of these, you know, Hulk game, like we saw with the 2005 Incredible Hulk Tools of Destruction, I think is what it was. Like that was great. And to be able to see that in a modern engine, there's so much potential there, but it's just capturing that lightning in a bottle that's so difficult if you don't have the right team on it.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. But let's wrap up the show with a single question that I don't think we actually touched on, but that's on the minds of every Xbox person who is obsessed with this Bethesda acquisition. When will Elder Scrolls 6 actually come out?
It is May 27th, 2021 right now. I would say earliest 2023, November 2023. I think latest November 2025.
So we're like, so you've got a range of 2 years you're looking at, but minimally it's already over 2 years away at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Starfield has to come out, and then that game is going to have its own post-con. Like, there will be a year after Starfield that has its own like post-launch of like, God, I don't even remember the Fallout 4 ones. Nuka-Cola, right? Or like Nuka-Cola World and all that kind of DLC. Like, Starfield needs to have those moments, and Bethesda isn't going to let. I mean, I imagine Bethesda isn't going to let Microsoft like step all over that. Basically, like those player bases are too cross-contaminated. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Definitely, I feel that.
I think you know, you have Halo this year. I would maybe Starfield comes out this year. I think Starfield next year. You let that breathe. You give it another year, and then yeah, I think Elder Scrolls at the absolute earliest then, because there's. And I mean, obviously, there's things that we don't know what's in the pipeline. And you have Fable, which like is super early in development. That's another one I don't think you're going to see until like not the tail end of the life cycle, but probably right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls, man, I can't. That game's been re-released too many times over for them to like have been working on it to that length.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. If I had to pin down a date for it, I would say I'm with you on, I think the cadence of release for Bethesda games is going to go, you'll see Starfield in 2023, I think is what you're going to get. Or no, I'm sorry, excuse me, Starfield in 2022. And then I think that if you see that release in like, let's say October 2022, just for the sake of argument here, and then you have an entire year of content based around different DLC packs that drop every 3 months or so, I think that in 2023 is when you'll see Elder Scrolls 6 drop. And then I think that in 2024, there's the potential for a new Fallout. I think that's when you'll see Fallout 5. And I think that's probably the cycle. Now, could that get pushed? Has that been moved around? Is that even happening? These are all questions, that are still up in the air. But that's kind of what I expect. And I definitely don't think Elder Scrolls is going to make any kind of significant appearance at this E3. And kind of like I was saying earlier, if they do, it's a mistake to show that game too early, because then you get that same, and similar to what you're seeing with Starfield, there's this level of hype like Cyberpunk, where you get this unreasonable level of expectation that can't be lived up to.
I didn't even consider that. Yeah, because wow, I didn't even think about that. Bethesda is literally living in the post-Cyberpunk world of you can't mess this up.
Yeah.
And it was when, and you probably remember this, when Fallout 4 released, sure, people enjoyed it, but people were not happy with how buggy it was.
I wasn't satisfied. I got it on day one and I was like, this is, because I had played some of Fallout 3 and some of New Vegas, and I was like, Fallout 4 is going to be my shit. 200 hours, let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah,
and so I get home from my shift at Starbucks, at the time, and I sit down and I'm like, this is not great,
No, I mean, I vividly remember coming home from work. Jess made a nice beef stew, installed the game, and fired it up, and I was like, this is such a Bethesda game.
Oh, yeah.
What is happening? It was just so buggy. And I tried to convince myself for literally that whole winter of this is a great game, and it just didn't do it for me. I know some people really enjoyed the storytelling in it, but I think the engine just got in its own in that game's own way. Granted, I was playing on a PS4, not on a high-end PC or anything like that, but I'm sure it would have been a different experience there. They can't mess this up, and they know that, and Microsoft knows that because now they own them.
Yeah, and it's very important that they get this right, because like you said, it's a post Cyberpunk world, and to your point earlier with The Witcher 3, it was such a good genre defining game that when you think about RPGs, you then think about Cyberpunk, and a game that's being pitched as a first-person RPG, you think they're going to nail it, and in reality, this studio just was not well-equipped enough, and they weren't prepared enough to hit that level of expectation. And so when people dive into Starfield, and the new engine they're running, let's say it's just a prettier version of the Bethesda jank that we all know and love, it's just not going to do it. And so then people are going to say, wow, Xbox didn't have games. Now they've got games, still not good games. They've got to really nail it to be able to not only, again, prove that Bethesda was worth the money they spent on it, but to keep selling those consoles and to really compete with PlayStation.
Yeah. 100%, man.
Yeah. So that rounds out Xhibition and Xbox Podcast episode 3. And again, since we've made it to the end of the show, you want to tell the fine people where they can find you online, my friend?
Sure. You can find me at Shrives93, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Not that I ever check it. Facebook, all that good stuff. That on Xbox, on PlayStation. You can add me. Feel free. Look at my trophy list and my achievement list and all that. You can see all of the Viva Pinata trophies I have, or achievements I have, which it's all of them.
Ooh, wow.
Because I love that game. Oh, yeah. That's one of my my weird Xbox crown jewels of oh, I did that.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that stands out, where it's just Viva Pinata. Have I considered going back and playing it? Sure, why not? Trouble in Paradise on the lunch break? Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's awesome, man. But I appreciate you taking time to have a conversation with me, and I hope you have a fantastic E3. I'm sure you'll stay busy with the team at IGN.
Thank you, man. No, thank you so much for having me. This was a great time. And honestly, I haven't, first of all, it's great just talking to you, face to face, because we've been talking on Twitter for God knows how long. But yeah, just even being able to ease my way back into the Xbox ecosystem. Brian, my co-host on the Platformers, can be a little hardcore about his love of it, and it's almost off-putting to me, where I'm like, this is a lot. This was very nice. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, you got to be welcoming, and who knows, maybe we'll get him on the show one time.
Oh yeah, he would love it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, definitely. But man, I'll let you go. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night.
You too. Thank you so much.